Conan Exiles, the ugly younger brother of Ark Survival Evolved. If I was being super harsh. Actually, Conan's a decent game, and it has been. It's gone through some ups and downs, and there's definitely been a few more downs in the last couple of years. But it went from strength to strength once it actually released out of early access with free content updates, lots of DLC to keep the hardcore players happy. And for a while, Conan I was pretty much putting above Ark Survival Evolved as one of the best survival games you could play. But that all changed with the pandemic. Funcom just weren't really prepared to deal with the situation. Seems like they had a lot of satellite studios working on stuff, whether it was port-in, Q&A, and a lot of them studios seem to have been shut down with no way to work from home for a lot of them. Hence why there was such a big delay in the Isle of Siptar, the DLC, arriving on consoles, and why in fact a lot of that map really wasn't ready even for its early access launch. That's kind of the past. Conan's been good to me in the past. It gave me some of my best months ever when it went free with PlayStation Plus, and I've been there since day one on its PC release. But I haven't played it in a while, and I'm hoping that the next update, 3.0, the big one, might actually entice me to come back and revisit Conan once more. But nothing I'm seeing is making that happen so far. That's because the devs are doing some really strange shit, just like they've always done in the last few years. I've hyped up Funcom in the past because they've always been great at letting the community know what's incoming. Either dev streams, vlogs, getting communication with streamers, players and more. That was the way to do it. Weeks before the major update, we would be teased stuff, we'd be shown stuff incoming, and then we'd have a nice big testing phase where content creators and players could rip into the new content, balance it out, hopefully give feedback and see some of them changes implemented for day one release of whatever free update it was. But since they got bought out by Tencent, I think it's pretty fair to say that has massively changed. Whether or not it's coincidence, whether or not it was just them reevaluating how they did it, they haven't done them same kind of things. And that was over 2 years ago now. Supposedly they've got more people working on Conan than they've ever had before, yet somehow they're not actually talking to fans about stuff. They're falling into the trap of making Conan this big commodity, this AAA gaming spear, where you don't actually talk to your fans, you just do big flashy reveals, hype stuff up, but don't actually show people or give the players a chance to really get into it. And then they're wondering why sometimes maybe the stuff they do put out gets pretty bad reviews. The Isle of Siptar DLC I thought would be great for Conan. We desperately needed a brand new map. Conan Exiles map is fairly small compared to lots of others, and despite the amount of dungeons that were coming through, they couldn't keep up with that pace of adding brand new fresh dungeons every update, every quarter. But Siptar is an absolute abject failure in terms of reviews. The base game's got 83% positive reviews and 78% overall, so that's not bad. But the DLC, it's a measly 51 and 50%. So only just about half the players have voted as this DLC being something worth your time. Isle of Siptar kind of being weak sauce was what finally stopped me thinking about Conan Exiles anymore. I only covered any news or updates about the game after that in sporadic survival show videos, especially the fact that they couldn't get the DLC at the same time as console, which did affect things massively. It's not all just about the PC master race. In fact, Conan, I would wager, is probably still got better numbers on console than it does on PC at the moment. And that's partially down to obviously being on Games Pass, as well as being free with the PlayStation Plus a good few years ago now. But that meant millions of players have had access to Conan Exiles that can come back and dip into it anytime they want. But yeah, I played like a few hours of the Isle of Siptar and I was kind of done. I could tell and sense there just wasn't going to be enough content in it at release, and it just wasn't going to be worth my time amongst a bunch of other games having stronger DLC or other games that were coming out. By the time it did get its full release, I've been assured that it's not too bad. It's got some fresh mechanics in it. They've took on board the feedback that players wanted to see more player settlements, and in effect they made it effectively an expansion of the original map. A new playable area, factions to go and get your thralls. So was it worth $20, $25 or whatever the price it was? Probably not. When you factor in some of their biggest rivals, as I mentioned, Ark were doing yearly free DLC maps, as well as their paid expansions. And this is the problem. I feel like Funcom could go down that route even worse in the future. They're hyping up the 3.0 launch as a big, massive update, a revamp, and I'm sure there's going to be some sort of paid component with it. I'm really starting to get worried that paid component is going to be a pretty abject failure, just like the Isle of Siptar map. Normally when devs are silent about stuff like this, it means they are kind of hesitant about something they're going to be selling or promoting. After 4 years of its existence, Conan Exiles maybe won't ever receive the big push of players coming into the game like it has done in the past. It has benefited in the past from other tubers picking it up like Neebs Gaming and making it more popular for a while, but that is usually pretty short-lived. We've seen a resurgence in games like Rust and Ark Survival Evolved during the pandemic, and Conan just didn't have that in its locker. That's because they had stopped updating the game at the same sort of speed just when the pandemic hit. Multiple problems and issues with console affecting the overall player base negativity, and then a DLC that seemed to be overpriced, unfinished, and just not worth anyone's time. Only maybe the hardcore players maybe would be that excited for it. So why am I here if I'm crapping on Conan so much? Well, like I said, in the early days, once they actually hit early access, I was promoting Conan as the best survival game going. I've done multiple videos of Conan versus Ark, and 2 out of the 4 years I'm pretty sure Conan won it. But last time I did, I said Ark was the better game because it had somehow managed to get better support. And if you're doing worse than Ark Survival Evolved in terms of support, you need to take a good look at yourself. But that was then. We got a fresh slate. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic. Maybe the 3.0 is going to be a huge chunk of stuff. What could it potentially have? Of course, the big one that players want is sorcery, proper sorcery. Now, I've never seen the big issue with this. I feel like we got half of what sorcery is to me, which is messing around with undead creatures. The ability to have the undead pets more, using poisons and elixirs and stuff, that felt to me like part sorcery. But of course there is that other element. People do want kind of either more magical stuff or maybe even transformation stuff. The one that I've always been more interested in is siege style content. Something that they kind of teased a little bit, but they never actually added to the game. Like, where's the catapult that we could fire a whole batch of human heads at enemy players? Part of that as well, they totally did nerf the corruption system, and it'd be nice if some of them features got added back. Imagine war elephants, imagine siege engines, more than just that one trebuchet that we've got. That to me would be a fresh new approach for Conan Exiles. Also, the amount of tames and creatures in the game that we can actually utilise. Right now we can only ride horses and rhinos. And the rhinos, well, only if you've bought the brand new DLC do you get a better choice in them. So I think it's time. I feel like they need to do more with the tames. Actually have more varied uses for a lot of them. Not just combat ones or ones that you can mount, but other uses. Maybe make them go out on their own to gather resources or be able to give you certain things like more milk and stuff. I want to see camels. It was part of the game back in the day and part of the early access. We thought we were going to get rideable camels or camel traders and stuff. It never got added properly. And we've got such a big choice of exotic creatures that we could have as mounts. Imagine larger sized pumas or tigers. Variants that will be battle axe, battle cats and stuff like that. If Funcom go down that route with this 3.0 update, I think that would be a good start to kind of getting the community back to supporting this as one of the best survival games going. But if they lock it all off behind DLC like they've done a lot with the other mounts and stuff, I feel like this game just won't be worth revisiting. I'm more excited about June and the possibilities that'll have. Conan was famously made in a short space of time, pretty much just cobbled together because the company wasn't doing that well. They looked around and survival was the new one in town. MMOs were going out the door, and so survival was the big new fresh thing to take on. But because of that, a lot of the problems and issues are really still just baked into the game. And no matter how many people they say they've got working on it, it still feels like actually Conan is underdeveloped. Even in their 4-year anniversary video, they were speaking about the fact they've got more developers than ever working on Conan Exiles. But if that's the case, why has it taken 5 months to get any kind of content added to it? The last content we've had was the Grave Matters, and that seemed to be something positive, and the devs have hinted that that will be making a return in some way. Basically, spawn points of creatures popping out of the ground, and you go and defeat them and get some rewards. But again, nothing we haven't seen in other games. Conan is developing at a snail's pace, and considering it's meant to be a live service survival game, I don't necessarily think that's okay. Other games I'll give them as much time as they want. Valheim devs I'll spend all day defending, saying they can take as long as they want to get their updates out the door. Because they're literally a team of like 9. But Funcom are a big studio now. They've got big funding and they've had that funding for 2.5 years nearly. Even before then they were making buckets of money. Yet it still feels like we're at the stage 4 years later on where they're talking about ramping up content. Well, why weren't you ramping up content 2 years ago? Why did it kind of stop with the mounts update even before the pandemic kind of hit? I feel like maybe during the pandemic they saw their numbers were stable, if not spectacular. They did see an increase in player numbers, but as I said, it wasn't as big as Ark or Rust or some of the other games, and it could have been. And I just thought, yeah, you know what, we can milk this baby a little bit more. So let's put a little bit more investment in it. But I just don't buy that they've got as much work into the Conan as it's had in the past, because the output just doesn't match what they're saying. And I'm just not a big fan of saving it all up for these big major tentpole updates. It's something early access games do because they need to. If you put out too many updates in a short space of time, no one's talking about it, no one's really getting behind it. So I understand all them decisions and why they do it. But for players, especially players that have stuck with Conan for all this time, you must be scratching around desperate for something new to do. Conan isn't an early access game, yet they chop and change stuff so often. We've had various different lead developers come in and put their mark on the game, and each one has kind of either been undone or they're focused on something else that maybe players didn't actually want messed around with. PvP is a pretty much no-show at the moment. They've probably lent too much towards PvE. And I'm pretty sure that big major mechanics like the Purge and the God system are still massively broken. 4 years after its full release. 4 years after its early access release. So yeah, I don't want to crap on it, but I'm just trying to give it a realistic take of why I haven't really been covering the game for the last few years. What I could see hopefully maybe as an improvement, or people maybe appreciating it. But yeah, hopefully we're going to get news soon. They're going to be at these summer game festivals going ahead. They've got their marketing manager and other people flying to LA. So I'm pretty sure we're going to see him at the PC Gamer Show revealing, hopefully, CONAN EXILES 3.0. Maybe a little snippet of June. And maybe some of their other games they're focusing on, like Metal Singer or whatever the hell that game was. But it's time. After this update, I don't want Conan to drop off the cliff again. I'd love to get behind it again. I'd love to make more content on it. But for that to happen, you need regular dialogue. You need to be going back to what you was doing beforehand. Doesn't have to be huge updates, smaller, focused updates every quarter, giving us a reason to come and play your game more regularly. This waiting a year and a bit to add major content is just not that great for supposedly a live service game. Conan does take your money in all sorts of ways. They've got all their DLC packs that you can buy. If Conan was a one game only thing that didn't sell them kinds of DLC, I'd be more prone to saying let them have the time they need. But as they have tried saying themselves, they are a live service survival game. And so that has an expectation that you're actually going to update your game on a more frequent basis. Agree, disagree, let me know. We'll find out the answers. I will give you a recap. There are some great Conan creators out there. Some of them I'm really good friends with, like Kaya on Fire. I'm sure they're going to do a much better job articulating stuff that'll happen. But yeah, if I see something exciting, it could be the start of me hitting Conan Exiles again. But we'll have to wait and see what exactly gets revealed at the non-E3 event in just 2 weeks. So until then, let me know what you think about Conan in 2022, and I'll see you rat bags later.